time on how I caught my 76-year-old grandpa sleeping with my 14-year-old daughter. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So one day my grandpa came over to see my family. My husband was at work, so it was only me and my daughter. My daughter is 14, my grandpa is 76, and I'm 39. After my grandpa visited, the next day he came back to take my daughter out to eat. They left at 5 p.m. and came back at 12 a.m. And when they came back home, my daughter wanted my grandpa to go in the room with her. So he went upstairs with her, and naturally I found that very suspicious. Cause I mean, like, that's weird. My grandpa slept over that night, and the next day I asked them if they wanted to come visit my best friend with me. Both my grandpa and my daughter said no, but while they were in the kitchen, I put a camera in her room and in the living room. I left, and not even 10 minutes went by and I saw everything. Like and follow part 2 on how I caught my 76-year-old grandpa sleeping with my 14-year-old daughter. Okay, so boom, like I said, I got suspicious and I put a camera in my daughter's room and in my living room. I left, and in less than 10 minutes, I look at the cameras and I saw everything. I quickly drove back home, and I was speeding, child. While I was driving back, I screenshotted the camera of my grandpa on top of my daughter while they were both naked. I busted down my house door and I heard moaning. I ran into the room and I kicked my grandpa in the nuts. And I beat my daughter ass. I called her dad, who came less than 5 minutes after me. While my husband handled my grandpa, I sat with my daughter and she told me that he was taking advantage of her. That he forced himself on her. She's now in therapy and he's in jail. Watch out for pervy Gramps.
Story time on how my dad forced me into getting an abortion. And to this day, we still don't speak. So I started dating my boyfriend, Jason, when I was 15. My parents never really minded me having a boyfriend until I got with Jason. He graduated high school, and my dad didn't like the fact that he wasn't planning on going to college. He said that he was wasting his life, but in all honesty, my dad was upset because he was poor and he felt as though he could never take care of me. There were times when my dad tried to pay him to break up with me, but he'd never take the money. And for me, that was just so embarrassing. Right before my 16th birthday, I found out I got pregnant, and I was kind of happy about it, even though I was still in high school. I've seen plenty of girls making it work. I, of course, told my boyfriend, and we told our family, but my dad wasn't happy about it. About a week later, he told me we were going to the doctor's to go see how far along I was. When I get there, I found out I was in an abortion clinic. If you want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how my dad forced me into getting an abortion. So like I said before, my dad lied to me and told me we were going to the doctor to see how far along I was. And when I get there, turns out he sent me to an abortion clinic. I got upset asking what was he trying to do. He explains to me why I shouldn't have the baby. He tells me if I ever have the child, he would never support me and that he will kick me out of the house. And that sooner or later, me and Jason would break up, which he was sort of right about. I felt like at this moment I had no help, and I told my dad I wanted to call Jason. So he gave me a quarter to make a call on the payphone, and he didn't pick up. My dad explains to me that he's not reliable and that this would be the best decision for the both of us. I thought I didn't have a choice, and he manipulated and gaslighted me into getting it, which I didn't know what he was doing at the time, but I got the abortion, and right after, I felt so numb. I couldn't even face Jason, so my dad lied and told him that I had a miscarriage. It's been years since then, and I still have regrets knowing who my child could have been. Story time on how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. In high school, I was not really popular, but I was talking to this one guy. Let's call him Nick. Nick was also known for cheating, but he told me that they were just all rumors. I also had a best friend, and let's call her Anna. So fast forward, we started dating, and one day I get a text from him saying, "Hey, can you come to my house tomorrow to watch a movie?" So I text him saying, "Of course, meet you at 7. He says, "Okay, see you." The next day, it was 6:30. I started driving to his house for the movie. Well, while I was driving, he probably texted me asking to cancel, but I was driving, so I didn't hear it. So I pulled up at his house, and he's in his bedroom. Well, he must have seen me look at him because he looked like he was talking to someone and told them something about hiding. If you want a part 2, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So remember when I told you guys I was on my way to his house? Well, he texted me while I was driving to cancel the movie date, and I didn't know because I was driving. When I get to his house, he's telling someone to hide. I was curious, so I went to his house. By the way, I had a copy of his keys and I went straight into his bedroom. And I could hear sounds coming from the closet, so I checked it. And it was my best friend, Anna.
Story time on how my mom sold me to my dad and I became his wife. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. I have a mom and a dad and they're both in their 40s. I'm 11 years old and I never knew who my dad was. I was raised by my mom. To make things short, my mom is broke. She works 2 jobs and she can barely make ends meet. But little did I know my mom had a conniving scheme of selling me. One day I woke up and a man was at my room door smiling at me. Then here my mom comes telling me to pack up, get ready, then leave. She told me right then and there that I've been sold and I will be living with this man for the rest of my life. And she's gone. She said best $10,000 she ever made. And I never seen my mom again after that. It all happened so fast, I was so confused, I didn't know what was going on. Next thing I knew, I was living with this man. Cooking for him, cleaning for him, and then shortly after, relations started. When I turned 15, he married me and we had kids. That's when he asked me, did your mother ever tell you who I was? I said no, just that you bought me. And then he told me that he was my dad. I was shocked at first, but I never knew him. I never even knew he was my dad. So I just forgot about it. I didn't really care. Now our kids got a dad and grandpa all in one. Story time on how I put a camera in my best friend's bathroom and found her doing the dirty with my senior citizen dad. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So I'm 14 years old and very much gay, or lesbian rather. I have a huge crush on my best friend who's 16 years old and I'm fascinated by her. She's just the best. I haven't come out yet, so no one knows, but I'm planning on coming out soon and expressing my love to my best friend shortly after. We also change in front of each other, so we're already quite comfy. Well, I saw a video on TikTok that made me buy a cute little bear, and I gave the bear to my best friend. The bear ended up having cameras in it, and I swear I didn't know. Maybe I did. Anyways, I logged into the camera and my best friend had put it in her bathroom. So occasionally I would just watch her brushing her teeth, doing her hair, cleaning up in general. But anytime she showered, I swear I wouldn't look. Yeah, it's a little creepy, but no harm if I don't watch her change, right? Anyways, a week into me watching, one day I called her and she didn't answer. My parents were at work and I was home alone, bored. And since she didn't answer, I decided to just check the cameras to see what she was doing. But this particular time when I looked at the camera, I didn't have to wait because she was already in the bathroom. There's no sound on the video, but I could tell she was laughing and talking to someone and she was literally naked. I thought, oh, she must have made up with her ex, and I got a little jealous. But then quickly to my surprise, I found out that wasn't the case at all. A man ran into the bathroom after her, picked her up on the wall, and they started making out. Then he carried her back into the room. I can only imagine what then went on in that room. Well, that man was my 56-year-old dad. I dropped my laptop and my jaws dropped. I was just shocked, lost for words. My 56-year-old dad is cheating on my 36-year-old mom with my 16-year-old best friend who I stalked with the hidden camera in her bathroom? So I can't really even say anything, right? I don't know. What should I do? Story time on how I had a threesome with my mom and dad. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Both my mom and dad are 38 and I just turned 18, so yes, I'm of age. I know it sounds crazy, but I've always found my parents attractive. I'm bisexual and I was determined to get my parents in bed. I tried everything to get them to notice. I slowly started flirting with my mom and dad individually. Then I started walking around the house with less clothes on. Then I started walking in on my parents doing the dirty. And it was actually working. So I decided to go for it. I sat them both down and I told them, I'm in love with y'all. They both laughed and said, we love you too, sweetie. And then I got sad and I said, no, not that type of love. I have romantic feelings for you guys. Then they shocked me and said, sweetie, we were in love with you ever since we adopted you. I was so happy. I then kissed my mom and then kissed my dad. Then we went upstairs and the rest is history. Now I'm my parents' girlfriend. Never give up, guys. This man survived 24 days lost at sea by eating only ketchup and seasoning. Elvis Francois was repairing a sailboat on St. Martin's Island and was dragged to sea by bad weather. He tried to get back to the port, but he couldn't because he had to mount and fix the seal. He tried calling friends and coworkers but couldn't because there was no signal. He also had to constantly remove water from the boat to keep it from sinking. He even tried to light a fire to send a distress signal but was unsuccessful. So the only thing he could do was wait and eat ketchup and seasoning. He had to collect rainwater anytime it rained with clothes on board the ship to stay alive. He was very resourceful. He engraved help on the boat's hull and just waited. Eventually, a container ship spotted him and seen the word help and stopped and led to his rescue. He was 1,000 miles away from where he started. He said there was plenty of times where he almost lost hope, but he kept going. So that's a reminder, you guys, never give up. Story time on how I take showers with my dad when my mom's not home. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So I'm grown, 16 years old to be exact, and I'm a woman. My dad is 38 and my mom is 50, and to be honest, she works a lot. So I'm usually home alone with my dad. Well, one day I was washing my hair and I needed to get my back washed, you know? Cause like I always struggle washing my back myself. So I called my dad and he came. With my back turned, I asked him to wash my back and he laughed. But he sure did it. We then looked into each other's eyes and both smiled and laughed again. One thing led to another and I turned around to expose my whole self to my dad and told him to come in with me. And guess what? He undressed himself, came in, and we had fun, if you know what I mean. Full-on makeout session is how it started. So now me and my dad's routine is to shower together when my mom's at work and we have lots of fun. But one day our fun was ended when all I seen was my mom opening the bathroom door and seeing my dad and I kissing, and obviously naked. Not long after that, my dad was heading to jail and my mom is putting me up for adoption. Now I'm living with a friend and have no family, so no more fun for me. Don't take showers, guys. Time on how my mom forced me to stop walking around naked in the house because my dad was looking. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. My mom and dad are both in their 40s and I'm 13. I'm an only child and honestly, I was raised with my parents walking around the house naked. I'm 13 years old and now I just decided that I wanted to start walking around naked in the house too. When I walk into my parents' room naked, they both look visibly uncomfortable and I don't know why. My dad and I have always been close, so I try to continue our normal day-to-day conversations. Yes, I may be naked, but who cares? Well, one day my dad came home from work and I went to go say hi, kiss him on the cheek and hug him like usual. I'm home, so of course, yes, I was also naked. My dad kind of brushed me off and ignored me and I thought it was kind of weird. Next thing you know, my mom takes me into the room and she starts giving it to me. She starts strictly and firmly telling me that I am not allowed to be walking around the house naked, especially when my dad's home. Then we started arguing, going back and forth because I feel like I can walk naked because they do it. Now my mom forces me to wear clothes, and if I don't wear clothes around the house, I am punished. So now I have no choice but to. Now everyone in the house wears clothes, but I want to go back to being naked. Am I wrong?
Story time of how I had an affair with my brother-in-law. By the way, I was 12 and he was 22. This happened a while back. I'm now 16. At the time, I was 12. I barely got on social media. I wasn't really supposed to have it, but I still had an account. So at a family party, I asked my brother-in-law if I could use his phone to go onto my account. He gave me his phone, but when I gave it back, I realized I forgot to log out. And I was, of course, texting other guys. And he obviously saw the conversations and read all of the messages between me and the guys, which I believe made him give hints to me. And he started talking to me, but I didn't really notice at the time. There were times when I did see him and he'd get very touchy. I would tell him to stop, but he told me if I ever told anyone about us, he was going to tell everyone, including my parents, that I was talking to other guys on social media. I didn't want to get in trouble, so I didn't say anything. If you want a part 2, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of how I had an affair with my brother-in-law. By the way, I was 12 and he was 22. So, like I said earlier, he threatened to basically tell everyone that I was talking to other guys on social media if I told anyone about what was going on between us. I was scared because I wasn't allowed to have social media, so I played this game. until I was 15 and he started inviting me to places alone. So I agreed, and he later forced me into doing nasty things. I had no other option because I knew if I spoke up about it, I'd be the one to blame. He started asking for pictures and I'd send them, but then I started to ask for things in return, like ordering things online for me. So it was going on for a while, and I would send him pictures in exchange for him to order stuff for me online. Until about a month ago, I was on my sister's iPad and I forgot to log out, and she saw all the messages of him asking for pictures, and thankfully I said no and kept denying it. Yes, I know I suck at logging off, but to this day, me and my sister barely. A story time about the worst dates in my entire life. And ladies, this is why you should really know a guy before meeting up with him. By the way, we're calling him Slim Jim. So I met Slim Jim over Instagram. He was cute and he lived in my area. He DM'd me about a date. So a couple weeks later, we went out to dinner. During our date, he seemed pretty cool, but he kept looking down at his phone. I didn't really get upset because he wasn't my boyfriend. When we ordered, the guy literally gets $200 worth of food, and me, on the other hand, I got a $20 solid. But all throughout the date, he kept looking around and I was so confused. And he constantly said that he needed to go to the bathroom. He told me that he took medicine that made him go to the bathroom a lot. The last time he went to the bathroom, he was gone for like 30 minutes, and at that point, I was irritated and ready to go, until a random girl walks up to me asking if I knew Slim Jim was here. I told her we were on a date, and she basically told me that she was his girlfriend and baby mama. If you want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of the worst date in my life. And the reason why, ladies, you need to really know a guy before meeting up with them. So, like I said before, he left me at a table for like 30 minutes, and I got upset because I thought he was trying to ditch me to pay the bill. Well, then a couple minutes later, a girl comes up to me asking if I was on a date with Slim Jim. I told her yes, and she basically explained that she was his girlfriend and baby mom. Well, at this point, she was his ex-girlfriend. She starts telling me the craziest things about him, that he robs people, and that he will soon be doing time for being a part of a murder investigation, and that I should stay away from him because he had HIV and that he gave it to her. I had to ask her, how did you find him? And she tells me that he takes all his new girls here. Then she leaves out the restaurant. 5 minutes later, Slim Jim comes back and tells me he thinks he dropped his wallet. In my head, I'm assuming that he's trying to make me pay for the $200 dinner. So I tell him that I have to go to the bathroom. I'm running out of time. This is part 3 of the worst date in my entire life, and the reason why you ladies need to really know a guy before meeting up with him. So his baby mom comes in and tells me the craziest things about him and then dips out. Slim Jim comes back out of the bathroom claiming he lost his wallet, so I had told him that I needed to go to the bathroom. When I get into the bathroom, I'm looking for an escape plan to leave out. When I get out of the bathroom, I walk the opposite way of a table and almost make it out of the restaurant. Next thing you know, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder and I turn around and it's him. I'm literally so confused because he was just sitting down the whole time. He asked me where the hell was I going, and I told him I was looking for the bathroom. He starts to act very weird. He walks me over to the bathroom and literally waits outside of the bathroom door until I get out. And guys, I didn't know what else to do. I needed an escape plan, and I saw a window in the bathroom and literally climbed out of the window to get away from this man. Then 2 weeks later, come to find out, he gets arrested and he's given 23 years in prison.
Story time on how I caught my dad watching my OnlyFans. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. So I'm 18 years old and I just made an OnlyFans. I have a 23-year-old friend who's making so much money, so I decided that I wanted to make that money too. $3,000 a month sounds amazing. Anyways, I did tell my parents and my mom was super against it, but my dad didn't care. I'm 18 and I'm grown, so I decided to make my own decision, and I made one. I've been doing it for 6 months now, and I've been making pretty good money like my friend. I'm currently still living with my parents, so I'm able to save a lot. One day after coming home from dinner with my friend, I was home and I got bored because I was home alone. I decided that I was going to take my dad's laptop and watch some YouTube. He doesn't know I know the password, but I figured it out like a year ago. To my surprise, when I opened the laptop and put in the password, I was right there naked. Literally my OnlyFans front and center on my dad's laptop. And I went to his history, so I seen that he's been on my OnlyFans a lot. My dad literally has been watching my OnlyFans. I quickly closed the laptop and ran back to my room, and now I don't know what to do. Should I tell my mom? Should I say anything? Or should I keep it to myself? I don't know. What should I do? We're talking about how my mom pissed me off, so I slept with my dad. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. My mom is 26, my dad's 36, and I'm 13. And yes, she had me at 13 years old. To be quite frank, my mom is a very jealous woman, specifically jealous of me. You see, I'm quite popular in school, I get lots of attention and I love it. But every time I go home, my mom wants me to do chores like wash the dishes, clean the yard, and vacuum the carpets. I hate when she does this because why should I have to clean this stuff? This not my house, I was just born in it. But she wants to, quote, instill good ethics in me, whatever that means. But the kicker is every time my dad's home, I get anything I want. Any food I want to eat, any gift I want, and he even gets me out of chores sometimes. If you ask me, my mom's jealous of our bond. Because sometimes when she sees me sitting on my dad hugging him, she would at those moments tell me to do chores. And unfortunately for her, one day it worked. I was sitting on my dad watching a Netflix movie and eating good. Here comes my mom coming home from work telling me to go do the dishes because it's full. This got me so mad. Why do I have to do chores? And that's when my plan started. I was going to sleep with my dad to get back at my jealous mom. Life report 2 on how my mom pissed me off, so I slept with my dad. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom came back from work and told me to do chores. I told her no, I'm watching a movie with dad, hoping my dad would back me up. But he said, go ahead, sweetheart, I'll pause it till you're done. This got me so mad. Why do I have to do chores? And that's when my plan started. I was going to sleep with my dad to get back at my jealous mom. So the next day I got back from school and my dad was home. We have about 3 hours together before my mom gets home from work. I was going to make sure I get my dad in bed. He was sleeping once I came back home from school, so I went and took a quick shower and I joined him. I laid beside him and it woke him up. Then my dad asked me what was I doing. No words needed. I kissed him and he kissed me back. And it happened. Yes, it happened. How's that to that jealous woman? That day we didn't get caught and I felt good because my mom deserved it, don't you think?
Here's another toxic best friend story time. Growing up, me and Emily were close. In our neighborhood, I was friends with everyone and she was just friends with me. Reason being because she said she didn't like people, and literally for no reason. But when I got into high school is when I started to drift away. I started making new friends I loved hanging out with, and I believe she started to notice because she'd always randomly say things, how come we don't hang out as much? And I just ignored her. And hanging around her, I was just always on my toes, and she gave me anxiety. Whenever she wanted to hang out, I noticed myself lying to her about what I was doing, because if I was just relaxing at home, she'd be like, so you're not gonna come see your best friend? That's fake. And she made me feel guilty about having my time or hanging around other people. One day when I was in school, I posted something on my Instasnap and I looked at who watched it and I saw a page that had my profile picture. And I clicked on the page and the page had all types of pictures of me saying how much I hate myself, how much I wanted to kill myself, and me. So when I clicked on the page that had my profile picture, it had all types of crazy posts about how much I hated myself. There were also posts of my friends from school and mean things being said about them also. I immediately tried and get the page reported, but it was still up for a couple days. I showed my friends just in case they found the page and thought it was me. I also told my mom, but the page continued to be up. Maybe a week later, I forget about it, and the posts on the page start to dwindle down. After a couple weeks, I go hang out with my friend Emily because I haven't seen her in a while. I went to her house and we just took pictures, and we used her phone because she had a newer phone. When I started taking pictures of her, a notification on Instagram pops up, and I accidentally clicked on it. And remember how I talked about how someone made a fake page with me? She was the one logged into the account. Okay, so I know everyone has been waiting on my part 4 about the story time with my friend Gianna and how her boyfriend Chris got lost. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch them parts now so you can understand what I'm about to talk about right now. So after the whole shooting went down and everything, we lost Chris in the midst of everyone. We ended up kind of lost ourselves because we really didn't know. Like, we were in different parts of town. We didn't know, like, I ain't know nobody. Like, I didn't know where I was at. But his cousin, it was his actual cousin, came to us saying that he knew where he was at because we was like, we sort of yelling for his name, looking for him. He knew where he was at. Cause Chris, I don't know if his phone died, but he was not answering his phone. I'm sorry, I'm like forgetting stuff. Okay, so we went to his house. He was in his basement. but he had a little cousin in there who his leg was shot, and they was debating if they want. The summer before entering into high school, I used to go to parties a lot, maybe once or twice a week. Me and my best friend Emily at the time would always go together, and the parties that we would go to were very packed. The parties were so wild that we literally had to hold hands throughout the entire party. That way we wouldn't lose each other. But this one house party that we went to was very creepy. At the time, the party was promoted on Instagram for a whole month. They consistently posted the local rappers coming, and other friends we knew said they were going. When we get to the party, come to find out the so-called house party was in their basement, and 80% of the people in the party were guys, and no local rappers. We stayed for like 15 minutes before we noticed the vibes were starting to change in the room. The guys at the party were very aggressive, very demanding. They would yank or tightly grip on our arms to come dance on them. When we finally decided to leave, as we're walking out the door, literally out of nowhere, right in front of us, a fight breaks out, and I get pushed in the middle of it. Here's another story time from one of my followers, and we're calling her Layla. Layla recently started talking to a guy, which we're calling Justin. She's only been talking to him for a month, and she hasn't really told her family or friends about him because she wanted to make sure he was the right one before letting everyone know about him. They've gone out on dates, and they did everything together. She honestly saw him as a best friend, and they could relate on everything. After a couple months, she finally allows her family to meet him. Later that same day, Layla went to Justin's apartment. When she got there, Justin took a shower, and Layla sat in his bed in his bedroom. As she was sitting down on her phone, she kept hearing Justin's phone go off with messages and calls. One of the calls she thought it'd be funny to answer and pretend to be him. When she answered, the other person on the phone answered and said, "What are you doing, baby? I missed you." And it was a man. Today's story time is about you guys' story time. Lately, I receive hundreds of story times about girls wanting me to tell their story or get advice. And one thing that I notice about every single story time, you're going to want to hear this. They're all about men. And not just any men, the narcissistic men. And this is honestly the worst type of person that you can have in your life. I've had my fair share, and trust me, it is not worth the energy. I'm not a therapist, but if any guy or maybe any girl have these characteristics, run. Sometimes even their presence make you tense, and that's not normal. You shouldn't have to change who you are to gain acceptance from them.
We gotta stop with the unsafe BBLs and butt injections and any major surgeries. We gotta stop that. This woman went in for butt injections but left with no hands and feet. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. April Brown was in the beauty industry for 30 years and she owned her own salon. She was insecure about her butt and wanted it to be bigger. Every time she seen a woman with a big butt, she would say, "I'ma get me one of those when I get some money." But she never actually went through with it because she was scared. Until one day a woman walked into her salon to get her hair done, and April and her started talking, and eventually they started talking about butt injections. This woman told April that she did butt injections for the low, and I mean cheap. That woman also came to the salon with a friend and told her friend to stand up and say, "Look at her, I did her butt injections and look how good her butt looks." So April was convinced, like, this is for me. Unfortunately, April thought this was a woman sent by God. She thought God knew that she wanted a big butt and God sent her this woman. So she thought, okay, so if it's in God's hands, I don't need to do any research. She trusted the woman and went to her home to get her butt injected with silicone. After the first injection, April started feeling weird and asked her to stop. Unfortunately, this was silicone found at the hardware store, so like a bathroom sealant. April then got a staph infection, and unfortunately, she had to cut off her hands and feet in order to save her life. Do your research, guys, even if you think it's sent from God. Be careful who you call your friends. Shanquella Robinson planned a trip with her friends to celebrate one of their birthdays. Unfortunately, Shanquella was found dead within 24 hours of arriving to Cabo with these friends. A recent video surfaced of one of her friends, Dejanay, beating a naked Shanquella in the room. One of the other friends told Shanquella to at least fight back while he recorded her naked body be assaulted, but Shanquella responded no.
Can you at least fight back? At least something. At least fight back, something.
She became unresponsive in a room similar to this. The friends called the concierge, who called the doctor, and the doctor performed CPR to Shanquella, and unfortunately she was pronounced dead at 3 p.m. They all left Shanquella's deceased body in Cabo, and they all went back to the U.S. before their trip was over. They then privated all of their social media accounts and told Shanquella's mom that she died of alcohol poisoning. However, the autopsy determined the cause of death to be related to a broken neck and cracked spinal cord, which suggested foul play. Shanquella suffered from a knot on her head, swollen face, split lips, and a swollen eye. No alcohol poisoning whatsoever in the slightest. The group of friends told the mom different versions of what happened, but the autopsy proved the stories to be untrue. Shanquella was a kid braider in North Carolina and also owned a clothing boutique. The police states that there is no evidence of murder or foul play. So what do you think? Accidental or foul play? Story time on how I caught my boyfriend having a threesome with my mom and brother. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Me and my boyfriend Terry had been dating for 3 years, and I had speculated he had been cheating for a while, but I never had enough info to back it up. One day I had to work overtime for my shift at Chick-fil-A. It was to 3 p.m., but instead I had to stay till 5:30. My boss had told me this last minute, so I had to take a rain check and reschedule my double date with my boyfriend and his parents. He took it pretty easily, which was a little iffy, but I let it go. Fortunately, my boss decided to let me leave an hour early, so instead of 5:30, I left at 4. Since we had a rain check, I decided to go home and freshen up my kitty cat. Get myself ready for our date tomorrow. I arrived at my house around 4:25 and I see my boyfriend car parked. I was like, oh my gosh, he's surprising me. So cute. But when I walked in, I seen my mom's clothes on the floor. Then I heard a thud, like a squeaky thud. I walked upstairs and went to my room. Then I heard a small moan. I put 2 and 2 together and ran to my mom's room. Like for part 2 on how I caught my boyfriend having a threesome with my mom and brother. Okay, so boom, like I said, after I heard the moaning, I put 2 and 2 together and I ran to my mom's room. The door was locked, but I didn't knock. I acted like a spy. I reached on top of the door part and grabbed the spare keys. I unlocked it and ran in, and there it was. All you can see is my brother on top of my boyfriend and my boyfriend's face in my mom's kitty cat. I yelled at my boyfriend and my mom, and my brother tried to act all shy and quiet, putting his clothes back on. I grabbed both my brother and my boyfriend by the ears, and I slammed their heads together. I proceeded to beat my brother's ass and ran to the kitchen to grab a hammer. I ran outside and broke my boyfriend's windows and windshield, then opened his car and went into his pocket, grabbed his pocket knife and sliced his chairs. Then I packed my things, went to my aunt's house, and I called my boyfriend's mom and told him everything. His mom told his dad, and his dad beat him up. I cut all contact with my mom and brother. All 3 of them have tried to reach out, but I'm good. Now I'm happily with another man, and we've been dating for 7 months.
When I was younger, me and my friend Makai became friends with this new girl who lived in our neighborhood, and we're calling her Valentina. Valentina lived with her brother's mom and her dad, who wasn't around often. He came around maybe once a week. One day, we were all playing outside, playing how regular kids should. Valentina's dad pulls up, sits in the car, and watching us as we're playing. When he finally gets out, he waves at Valentina, then calls over my friend Makaya and asks to speak with her. We're all confused, but then he told her that it was very important that she come and that everyone else has to stay here. Makaya and Valentina's dad had walked into the alleyway and turned the corner. And me and Valentina listened and stayed where we're at, and we stopped playing. When Makaya finally comes back, we continue to play. When it was time to go back home, me and Makaya walked home together. I asked her, why did Valentina's dad pull you aside? She proceeded to tell me, he told me not to say, but he asked to see my boobs. There's more to the story, like for part 2. So after we go back home and Makaya tells me Valentina's dad asked to see her boobs, I was so in shock. But she tells me she didn't show him because she felt weird doing that. By the way, I forgot to mention, at the time I was 10 and Makaya was 12. She already started developing, if you know what I mean. After she tells me everything that happened, we agreed upon telling her mom. When we got to her house, we told her mom, and immediately she calls Makaya's dad. Guys, when I tell her dad came to the house, she was ready to kill this man. Her dad was like the hood type, and he brought all his boys. They went to Valentina's house asking to see her dad. Valentina's mom answers, and she tells Makaya's dad that he's not there, which was a lie. I'm guessing she could feel what was about to happen. He then went and told her what her dad had did, and her mom is so in disbelief, and she chooses not to believe him, saying he'd never do that. Makaya's dad was so frustrated and just walked away. As soon as she closes the door, we all hear Valentina's dad say, "What's going on?" And when I tell you this man ran up, he ran back and kicked the door open. After we hear Valentina's dad, Micaiah's dad kicks the door open and he ran inside and just attacked Valentina's dad. It was honestly the most scariest thing I've seen because you could see in his eyes that he was just ready to kill that man. And maybe after a minute, they finally pulled Micaiah's dad off of Valentina's dad. And guys, her dad's face was just covered in blood. Almost felt bad for him, but then I was like, God's plan. Anyways, after the whole thing happened, Valentina's mom called the cops and Micaiah's dad was arrested for assault. But he wasn't in jail for long. Still to this day, he talks about how it was well worth it. And Valentina's father, he was just looked at as a sexual predator. And I never really thought about it until now, but I truly wonder how Valentina felt. Because after the whole situation, me and Micaiah never saw Valentina ever again. Not even on the streets. It was like she disappeared. Here's another toxic best friend story time. Okay, my best friend at the time, which we're calling Emily, had set me up in a fight. Okay, so summertime of 2015, there were new girls that moved into our neighborhood. They were sisters. One of the sisters was a little weird, but she was an innocent girl, which we're calling Daisy. My friend Emily, from the start of meeting her, did not like Daisy at all. And that's how Emily was. She never really liked people or any new friends to our friend group. One day, out of nowhere, she hangs out with Daisy, which was kind of strange because she always told me she didn't like her. I ignored it. The next day, she hangs out with me and tells me that Daisy was talking crap about me. When Emily told me, I brushed it off. But then she told me if I didn't confront her, I'd look weak and a punk. So me wanting to prove that I wasn't weak, I confronted Daisy. Guys, we fought, and guess what? Daisy never talked crap about me. Emily manipulative self planned it all out, and let me tell you exactly how she played. Part 2 of my toxic best friend story time. Okay, so this might sound all confusing, but try and keep up with me, okay? So after the whole fight had happened, part of me just felt dumb because I didn't know what actually happened. And I didn't know exactly what was said. So almost 2 weeks went by and I saw Daisy outside. And one day, I just went up and just straight up asked Daisy, what exactly did she say to me about Emily? She said the day her and Emily was hanging out, Emily was talking to her about our problems that we were having in our friendship. Daisy then said that Emily said to her, don't Ayana just annoy you? And she said she guessed so. But overall, Emily was just basically fishing for Daisy to say something bad about me. When in reality, Daisy wasn't paying me no mind. I then go to Emily and told her what Daisy had told me. She laughs and I'm just sitting here all confused. You're not going to even believe what she told me. She says, I was bored and the block was dry and that it was just a joke. At the time, I don't know why I let it slide, but now that I think of it, that's crazy how she was able to play with my emotions like a toy. And that's not a friend.
This white woman who only dates rich black men went from being an OnlyFans model to murdering her black boyfriend. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Courtney Clenny was a 25-year-old OnlyFans model who was dating 27-year-old Christian Abumseli. One particular night, they got into an altercation that resulted in the death of Christian. Courtney claims he grabbed her by the neck and threw her on the floor. She then went to the kitchen, took a knife, and threw it at him in self-defense. However, the medical examiner determined his injuries were from a forceful downward thrust and not a throw. As he was bleeding out, she then called 911, where you could hear his last words before passing away. He claimed she was in an abusive relationship where she was the victim. However, both Christian friends and family, and even her own friend, said that she was the aggressor. You see a trend of violence because she broke the jaw of Mr. Olympia Sean Roden, who was her ex. She broke his jaw. We also now have audio of her calling Christian the N-word and basically going crazy. It took 4 months for her to be charged, and Christian's family said it was her white privilege that contributed her to not being held accountable immediately. So what do you think? Self-defense or murder? Have you heard about the Lululemon murder? If you're having problems with one of your coworkers, listen to this because your life might depend on it. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Brittany Norwood was an employee for Lululemon located in Maryland. Brittany had a very long criminal history of stealing. She stole from family and friends, and her ex-boyfriend even had to get a restraining order against her because she broke into his house and robbed him. And now that Brittany was working at Lululemon's, things were no different. She began stealing when she would work, and the employee employees and managers started noticing things missing also when she would work. They knew she was stealing, but they needed proof. They needed to actually catch her stealing. That brings us to Jana Murray, a 30-year-old woman who also worked at Lululemon. One night, both Brittany and Jana had closing shifts, and when they were done, it was time to leave. Policy is to check every staff member bag before they leave, so that's exactly what Jana did. She checked Brittany's bag, and of course, she found a pair of leggings that was not paid for. Brittany was stealing, and she finally got caught. Jana then told Brittany that she would have to tell the store manager, and Brittany tried to convince her that she did pay for it, but of course, that wasn't true. Jana locked the door, and Brittany and Jana now were making their way home. This is when Brittany made her plan. She didn't want to get fired for stealing, so she lured Jana back into Lululemon. She called Jana saying that she left her Metro card inside the store and she needed Jana to unlock the door so she could get it and go home. Of course, Jana comes back to help, but unfortunately, Jana did not know this would be her last moments on Earth. Brittany lured Jana to the back hallway and attacked her with these weapons found in the store. She used 5 of the weapons and she stabbed Jana 331 times cold-blooded. As all this screaming and dragging was happening, there was an Apple store next to Lululemon with CCTV cameras, and as you can see, they went to the wall listening to the whole thing, but they didn't call the cops because they thought it was petty drama. After the murder happened, she then tried to stage the scene and make it look like they were robbed. She emptied the cash register. She took a Lululemon size 13 shoe and walked on blood to make fake footprints, washed the shoe off and put it back on the shelf, cut herself all over her body to make it seem like she was attacked. She drove Jana's car like 3 miles away. She even cut off her crotch area so that they could think that she was sexually assaulted. She then zip-tied her hands and feet to make it seem like she was robbed and waited till somebody found her the next day. But did her plan work? Like and follow for part 2. Stepping away from the story real quick, as you can see, taking your mental health serious is very important. So I want you guys to click the link in my bio and download my ebook, I Am Enough. Self-love, self-care, and mental health while you find your confidence. Ebook by me, Valerie Slays, and the link is going to be in my bio, guys. The Lululemon murder case part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, after killing Jana, she tried to make it seem like they were robbed. So she emptied out the cash registers, she cut herself, she moved her car, just a lot of things, including tying herself up and waiting for someone to find her to make it seem like this was a robbery gone extremely wrong. Everyone believed her at first, but after investigators started investigating, things were not adding up. The Apple employees next to the Lululemon store said that they didn't hear any men speaking. They only heard women speaking and screaming, not the men that Brittany claimed robbed them. And when they eventually found Jana's car that Brittany moved, they found Brittany's blood and Jana's blood in the car. Also, while Brittany was being interrogated, at one point the investigators stepped out and left her and her brother in the room by themselves. At that point, she basically confessed to the killing, not knowing that they were being recorded the whole time. She's been convicted of first-degree murder, premeditated, and she is sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Watch out for your coworkers, guys. This woman went from playing hide and seek with her boyfriend to zipping him up in a suitcase and leaving him there to die. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Sarah Boone was in a relationship with a man called Jorge. They were together for about 3 years, but the relationship was the furthest thing from healthy. Jorge was constantly in and out of jail and had a lot of issues. A lot of his issues and reasons why he would get in trouble stemmed from his relationship with Sarah. Many of Jorge's arrests was due to DV against his girlfriend, Sarah. But Sarah didn't leave. She said she loved him so much and wanted to help him through his problems and just help him become a better person. But Sarah isn't all that innocent either. Sarah was also arrested for DV against Jorge for having bruises on his neck where she allegedly tried to strangle him. So on both ends, it was a pretty toxic relationship. The police was called to their apartment quite frequently. But Sarah didn't leave him and she helped him get classes to work on himself. And after he worked on himself, their relationship was doing much better. They were in a better place. He was doing so good. And he even apologized to Sarah for his past actions against her. So no more fighting. Fast forward to one particular night, Sarah says Jorge and her were playing hide and seek. While they were playing, they thought it would be funny to just put him inside of a suitcase. I don't think that's how hide and seek works, but so Jorge got into the suitcase, Sarah zipped it up, and then she just went upstairs and she just forgot and she just fell asleep. And when she woke up the next day, she went downstairs and seen that he was still in the suitcase and he was dead. And that's when Sarah called the cops around 1 p.m. Sarah said it was non-intentional and she wanted to help the investigators any way she could. So when they asked her for her phone, she did it with a quickness. She had nothing to hide. What Sarah didn't realize is that she took a video that night with Jorge inside of the suitcase. And he was in the suitcase begging for Sarah to let him out because he could not breathe. She sounded very drunk in the video, which is likely why she didn't even remember she had the videos in her phone. The recording is about 2 minutes long. Jorge screamed, "I can't breathe," and Sarah said, "That's how I feel when you choke me." Again, he said, "I can't breathe," and she said, "That's how I feel when you cheat on me." Again, he says, "I can't breathe," and she says, "Then shut the fuck up." Like for part 2. This woman went from playing hide and seek with her boyfriend to zipping him up in a suitcase and leaving him there to die, part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, one time when he said he can't breathe, Sarah said, "That's how I feel when you choke me." A second time he says, "Sarah, I can't breathe." She says, "That's how I feel when you cheat on me." In the video they found on her phone, he says, "Sarah, I can't breathe," for the third time, and she says, "Then shut the fuck up." As he's there telling her, "Sarah, I can't breathe. Sarah, I can't breathe. Sarah, I can't breathe," she went upstairs and went to sleep. She left him there to die. I'm gonna play the video they found on her phone. Hopefully TikTok leaves it up, but if you don't see it in this video, it's because they took it down. She still stands by this being a hide and seek game gone wrong. It was just an accident, non-intentional. She's currently awaiting trial November of this year, 2022. So what do you think, intentional or not? Leave your comments below.
Story time on how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. Now, this story time is not to encourage others to cheat. I just want to explain how I did it. So, when it came to high school education, I cared less about actually learning the material they taught in school, but more about getting a good grade. So, if you're like me, this video is for you. In school, I created a bunch of friends with all types of people, but not just anyone, but with people that had the same class with me. Even if they weren't in the same class period, if I knew we had the same teacher, guarantee you were on my roster of friends. In the beginning of the year, I sort of created an agreement with each friend when it came to things like homework, classwork, projects, and especially tests. Also, I cheated over 95% of my tests and scored high. I really want to get into details, but I'm running out of time. Please come back for a part 2 if you want to know how I did that. This is part 2 of how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. So, like I said earlier, I created agreement with each friend. Now, we never had a discussion over who was doing what work, but I had specific friends for English homework, math, tests, etc. I was always involved in group chats for each class, and because I was friends with everyone, I was able to trade what I needed with what they needed. I would trade homework that wasn't even a class I was taking and for test answers. So it was like a win-win, and I always had backups just in case someone didn't have them. But those things mainly came in handy for homework, classwork. Now, when it came to things like tests, like I said earlier, I cheated over 95% of my tests, and I always scored high. Also, by the way, I never studied, and let's get into how I did that. Running out of time, wish TikToks were longer. Come back for part 3. This is part 3 of how I cheated all throughout high school and got valedictorian. When it came to things like tests, I cheated over 95% of them and always scored high. Also, by the way, I never studied and I never got caught. I'm going to expose, so hopefully there's no teachers watching this. I had 3 methods of cheating. Number 1 was either one of my friends would take a picture of the test or get the picture of the test from someone else and send it to me, and I'd write codes for what answers were. So like if the answer was apple, I'd write AP for short. So even if I did get caught, the teacher wouldn't even know what the little paper meant. Alright, number 2. I also cheated by sneaking a picture of the test myself, then pretending that I needed to go to the bathroom or the nurse because I felt sick, when in reality, I was in a hallway looking up the answers on my phone. My third cheating method was my ultimate way of cheating, just in case the first 2 wouldn't work. I'm running. Today's story time is Toxic Best Friend Edition. So I've been friends with this one girl who stole from the store a lot, and I will still stay friends with her. We have been friends since 2nd grade, and things started to get weird when we got into middle school. This one day we were getting ready to go out, and my room had stuff all over it because my mom just had bought me new clothes for school. But I still invited her into my house. And once I invited her into my room, I told her I had to go to the bathroom. And when I got back, my room looked displaced. But I didn't think nothing of it because my room was already looking a mess. We go out, we started walking around, and I noticed she has something underneath her shirt. And it's my new bra. She proceeded to tell me it wasn't a big deal and that she was only borrowing it. But to borrow something, you must ask for permission. But she just acted as though I was being too dramatic. Couple years later, I still never got that bra back. And also, she stole my underwear a year later. Here's another toxic best friend story time. When I was in middle school, my Instagram page started to grow, and it was only because I used to post a lot of dance videos. My toxic best friend at the time, which we're calling Emily, noticed my page was starting to grow, and she had my Instagram page on her phone, and same thing with her. I had her Instagram page on my phone, but I would never go through her page. When it came to my page, she would notice that I would get a lot of DMs from random guys, sugar daddies, that type of thing. Those men that would pay you for your services, if you know what I mean. And this one day, she actually responded back to one of them. And I had no clue until later that day. She was sending naked pictures back, not of me, but random stuff she found on the internet. And one of the dudes she was actually talking to wanted to meet up. And guys, she gave him my address. By the time I checked my phone, they had a whole plan to link up. There's more to the story, like for part 2. Part 2 of my toxic best friend story time. So after I saw that she gave this strange man my address and set up to meet with him, I immediately wrote, "Hi, I'm a catfish," and blocked him. I changed my password so she couldn't get into my Instagram account anymore. And guys, I was so upset that I ran to her house. And usually it takes me 10 minutes to walk to her house, but that day it only took me 3. I banged so hard on her door, her mom answered and came out and said, "Why are you banging on my door so hard?" I said I apologized for banging so hard and that if I could ask to speak to Emily. She tells me she's at her grandma's house, which was only 2 blocks away. So I went to her grandma's house, and this time I knocked, she answered. I immediately yelled, "Why the hell would you use my page to tell this man where I live?" She tried to gaslight me, which at the time I didn't know that's what it was. She was basically trying to tell me it wasn't a big deal and that she was going to split half the money with me. I laughed and dragged her down the stairs. There's more to the story, so sorry guys. Part 3 of my toxic best friend. So after I met up with Emily to confront her about giving this man my address, she tries to act as though it's not that serious. So after I dragged her down the stairs, and from there we started to get into it. I guess her grandma heard everything from inside because she came running outside to stop it. Once she breaks it up, she asks, "Why are you two fighting? And that's not what sisters are supposed to do." Emily says, "I don't know, she just came here and started with me." Her grandma looks at me like, "Wow, I'm really disappointed in you. Especially because I thought you were one of the good ones around here." My face dropped because Emily never explained truly why I came up here, and her grandma was just ready to take her side. I was going to stay quiet and not say nothing because I know her parents are really strict, but I was done protecting her. So I told her grandma everything, even things that had nothing to do with the situation. I was so upset. But after the whole situation was over, I didn't talk to her for almost a year. Then that next summer, I don't know.
A Diary of a Wimpy Kid actor proved not to be so wimpy after murdering his mom and planning to kill the prime minister. Okay, so boom, let's jump right into it. Ryan Gratham was a child actor who first started in The Secret of the Nutcracker at 9 years old. Not long after The Nutcracker, he became more successful and featured in highly successful films such as Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Becoming Redwood. He also starred in successful shows like Supernatural and Riverdale. Pretty ordinary upbringing minus his dad, who wasn't part of his life. It was just him, his sister, and mom, and he actually had a really close relationship with his mom. Until Ryan became clinically depressed. When COVID-19 first hit and we all quarantined, his mental health suffered even more. His clinical depression was causing him to fantasize about homicide and suicide. But Ryan kept suppressing his fantasies and urges. Until one day he took his GoPro camera and he started rehearsing on how he was going to murder his mother. Yes, he filmed himself practicing to kill his mom. He would creep up behind his mom with his rifle and point it at her head. Then he would let go of the trigger and just walk away. He did this over and over and over again, but never pulled the trigger. Until one day he did something different, something strange. This day, Ryan was in his room and he was just loading and unloading his gun, loading and unloading his gun. He just did this over and over until he was satisfied. He then went downstairs, creeped up behind his mom, and this time he shot her with no hesitation. Again, he took his camera and recorded his mom's deceased body while he confessed. He also documented everything in his journal. He then laid a white sheet on her and a rosary on top of her, and he put candles around her body. Then he went upstairs to watch Netflix for 2.5 hours until he fell asleep. The next day, part 2 of his plan commenced. He was going to drive 50 hours away to kill the prime minister. On his way there, he changed his mind and thought of doing something that would mean more to him. He was fighting between Simon Fraser University, where he attended, and the Lionsgate Bridge to commit mass murder. But instead, he went to a police station and told a cop that, "I killed my mom." He confessed to everything and showed the video and journal as evidence. Like for part 2. The Diary of a Wimpy Kid actor murdered his mom and planned to kill the prime minister. Part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, one day after killing his mom and watching Netflix, he went to the police station and he confessed to everything. He showed the video of himself practicing murdering his mom and also the journal of him planning to kill the prime minister. 4 minutes of home footage with him practicing to kill his mom and also videotaping his mom's deceased body and confessing on the video. He said he only killed his mom to stop her from seeing him potentially kill the prime minister and do other mass murders. So he killed his mom so that she wouldn't see him killing other people. He's been sentenced to life in prison and eligible for parole in 14 years. What would you do if you had the chance to kill your rapist? Would you do it? Okay, so boom. Piper Lewis was a 15-year-old girl who was being abused by her adoptive mother, so she ran away. With nowhere to go, she was sleeping on an apartment stairwell where she met her 28-year-old boyfriend. Again, at this time, she is 15. Piper and officials say that her boyfriend signed her up for dating websites and trafficked her, forcing her to have sex with grown men for money. One of those men was Zachary Brooks, a 37-year-old man who raped her multiple times. She cried to her boyfriend multiple times saying she didn't want to do this, but he held a knife to her head and said she had to. Piper was then forced to drink and use substances before once again being raped by 37-year-old Zachary Brooks. When she awoke, she found a knife and stabbed Zachary 30 times where he died. She is now 17 years old, where she was charged with involuntary manslaughter and willful injury. She pleaded guilty, and a quote of how she feels says, "I took a person's life. My intentions that day were not to just go out and take somebody's life in my mind. I felt that I wasn't safe and I felt that I was in danger, which resulted in the acts. But it doesn't take away from the fact that a crime was committed." Pierce got sentenced to 5 years probation, and she has to pay $150,000 to her rapist's family for restitution for leaving his kids without a father. Prosecutors never disputed that Pierce was sexually assaulted and trafficked, and her boyfriend who trafficked her has not been charged with anything at this moment. Due to the public's outrage, her GoFundMe has raised over $400K. However, the court may not accept donations. Comment your thoughts down below. Put a finger down if you have a best friend. Now put a finger down if you think your best friend will murder you and stab you over 50 times simply because she decided she doesn't want to be your friend anymore. Unfortunately, that is the true crime case of Skylar Annette Neese. Okay, so boom. Skylar was a 16-year-old girl who actually was an intelligent, straight-A student, top of her class. She's what you would call a good girl. She was the only child to her parents, Mary and Dave, and since she was the only child, she was literally their light, pride, and joy. When Skylar was 8 years old, she met her best friend Sheila Eddy at a community church. Sheila was a bit more on the wild side, more of a bad girl type of vibe. Sheila came from a broken home and she was also an only child, so her and Skylar became really close. So close that Sheila could just walk into Skylar's house at any time because they treated her like family. They continued to be best friends throughout the year, and once they got into high school is when they met their third best friend, Rachel Schultz. Rachel was also raised as an only child and came from a religious family, but she lived a rebellious, wild life when she wasn't around her family. Everything was good at first until Skylar started to become the third wheel. Sheila and Rachel would rebel and do things like sneak out and smoke weed, but Skylar wasn't into that because she was more of a good girl. Eventually, Sheila and Rachel stopped inviting Skylar to anything because she was no fun and boring. It was also rumored that at a sleepover, Skylar seen Sheila and Rachel get intimate with each other, and they also didn't want her to spill their secret of them getting intimate with each other, so they were pushing her out for that reason as well. Nonetheless, being left out made Skylar extremely sad. It made her so sad that she vented and said things on Twitter like, "Sick of being at fucking home. Thanks, friends. Love hanging out with you all too. Just know I know. Hope you don't expect me to give a fuck anymore. Bye. Fast forwarding a little bit, eventually Sheila and Rachel invited Skylar out. But Skylar would have to sneak out to do that. She hesitated at first, but she missed her friends so much and wanted to be back cool and part of the group that she just decided to go. Skylar kissed her parents goodnight, acted like she went to sleep, but snuck out the house. She got into the car with Sheila and Rachel, and they went to a secluded area in the woods where they would usually smoke weed. But instead, it was a setup, and Sheila and Rachel counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. Then they stabbed Skylar over 50 times and murdered her. She tried to run and fight back, but they overpowered her, and they said that her last words were, "Why?" Like for part 2. Stabbing your best friend over 50 times and murdering her because you don't want to be friends with her anymore, part 2. Okay, so boom, like I said, they counted to 3 and murdered their best friend by stabbing her over 50 times because they didn't want to be friends with her anymore. They left her body there and said her last words were, "Why?" After Skylar's parents reported her loss, Sheila had the audacity to act concerned and would go to Skylar's parents' house, cry, and act like she was trying her best to get answers, knowing she was the one who killed their daughter. And while Sheila was acting worried and concerned, she had the audacity to go on Twitter and tweet subliminals like, "Why is my favorite question?" Knowing that was Skylar's last words. And she also tweeted, "We really did go on 3. Because on 3 is when they attacked and killed Skylar." Eventually, investigators questioned Rachel and Sheila so heavily because they were caught in so many lies. Rachel eventually broke down and confessed to everything. Both were charged with murder, and Sheila got life and eligible for parole in 15 years, and Rachel got 30 years and is eligible for parole in 10 years. Be careful who you call friends, guys.